thank you all for coming. And thanks to the McArthur Library and the Biddeford Historical Society, not the Biddeford Pool Historical Society, and Melanie and Joe and Karen and all the helpful staff. They've been awesome. Also, before I forget, I want to thank Margot Alley and Roger Gross and Richard Levy and Eve and lots of other people who have provided me with lots of information and photos and other good stuff here. Also referencing The Shores of Saco Bay by J.S. Locke and Gleanings from the Sea by Joseph Smith and The History of Biddeford and Saco by Olson, can't remember his first name. So any factual information is thanks to them. Any erroneous information is all mine. And there's probably a fair amount of it. And speaking of which, if anybody knows something that I don't know or wants to correct me, feel free, because I do not claim to know everything about all this stuff. So please, Anne, speak up if I screw up. You know more than anybody in this room. And anybody else too, Eve, Margot. So I will be skipping around chronologically and geographically, but I'm going to try and follow geography more than chronology here, just because I think that'll be easier to follow. And we are starting with the Curtis Farm Hotel, which was on what's now Route 9 near the end of Fortune's Rocks Road. And it was the first, we believe, the first hotel or first inn in the Fortune's Rocks area, and probably one of the first in the coast of Biddeford. William Curtis was the first proprietor. He lived in. Sorry. William Curtis was the first proprietor. William Curtis lived in Granite Point, near Brackett Point, Curtis Cove, which is the cove at the end of Granite Point Road, just before you get to Timber Point, was presumably named after him or his family. Many of the guests that stayed in this hotel became eventually homeowners in Fortune's Rocks as people built summer cottages over time. Charles Tanner, who you'll hear a lot about, bought the Curtis Farm Hotel from Curtis in about 1923 and ran it until about 1941. In 1941, it burnt and everything. Let's see, how's this work here? This part burned down and this barn burned down. This structure remained and remains to this day, and is this house, which you all, yes, okay. We go back and you can see it there quite clearly. The barn also burned down. The barn that you see in this picture was replaced after the fire of 47, built by Lynn Thomas. Supposedly, I don't know if this is true or not, but supposedly out of wood that was reclaimed after the fire and milled into the timbers that they built the barn with.
When was the original house built?
Don't know. It was first run as a hotel in about 1872. It's a really, I sold this house recently, and it's a really old house. You go down to the basement and it's very, very old construction, but a really cool house. So the house burned down, and the hotel burned down. The house was retained, and it was never a hotel again. That is, sorry, and I should have told you, remind me to tell you, that's number 8A on your maps. So it's the one up by Route 9, farthest up left-hand corner.
So was that a house that you just added to the hotel, or it was built as one big hotel?
Don't know. Don't know. Yeah, there's a lot I don't know. Was it a house that a hotel was added to? Was it built as a house, a big house? I don't know the answer. Oops, wrong one. So that's here, 8A on your map. We're going to come down Fortune's Rocks Road toward the ocean. So here's Pool Street or Route 9. We're coming down Fortune's Rocks Road. And what you'll see in the next slide is the old casino, which was not a gambling casino. Sorry. And you'll see the bowling alley, the wash house. And so remember, Charles Tanner was the last owner of the Curtis House Hotel. Charles Tanner also had the Tanner Inn, later Hotel Rocks here. He also had a hotel here called the Cove Crest. And In this slide, you're coming down, this is Fortune's Rocks Road back in the day. And this is what became Hotel Rocks. It was Tanner's Inn at some point or another. This is the first of 3 different versions of that building after remodeling and or fires. This is the Fortune's Rocks Casino. This is an inn that I know nothing about except that it shows up in a history of Fortune's Rocks written by Bob Schaub. He says it was an inn and farmhouse, but I don't know who owned it. I don't know who ran it. I don't know when it was. It disappears in pictures very soon. So this is an early picture, and this building disappears fairly quickly. I also don't know what this is. It looks like a church or a schoolhouse or something. No idea. Not a clue. So as you come down Fortune's Rocks Road, you hit the ocean right up here, and you have to bear a hard left or you drive into the sea. And this is a view from the opposite direction. You're on the across the cove off of Ocean Spray Avenue, what's now Ocean Spray Avenue. So this is the first iteration of Tanner's Inn. This is what became the Cove Crest Inn, but at the time it's William Bryant's house. This is that other inn, who knows? This is that other building, who knows? And this is the casino. I'll get to the casino in a minute with more on that. So here's the casino. The casino was built on land donated by Charles Tanner and his partner at the time, Louville Emmons. Louville Emmons was a builder and he probably built it, although we don't know that for sure. They had bowling in this building. They had dances. They had movies, plays. It was a source of employment for the local kids for the summer. It was just sort of their clubhouse, if you will, but it was a all-purpose entertainment center, if you will. This building burned, so I'm assuming that most of you are aware of the Fire 47 that burned a good part of the coast of Biddeford, Kennebunkport, and lots of Maine. This building burned down in 47. There's a terrible story about a family who lived on Route 9 just across the Kennebunkport line in the what was called the Emmons Farm. It's now Hank LeBrie's place, who they were afraid they were going to lose their house and their furniture, so they packed everything up and moved it up into the casino. The casino burned and the house didn't. So the next
casino.
It was a common term for a place where people went to play. Not play partly on the, yes.
It means big house.
Oh, really? It means big house is the answer. Or a little, that would be casita. So we're gonna, next is the Hotel Rocks. So this is just past the casino. This is number 8 on your map. This is, if you know where Lily Pond is in Fortune's Rocks, this is on the backside of Lily Pond, which is the farthest southerly pond as you go through Fortune's Rocks from north to south. Beautiful building. So you can see it's already changed. Remember the earlier picture showed it with this mansard roof, right here. And they've already remodeled it into this with these very fancy peaked roofs, big barn in the back. Lots of buildings in Fortune's Rocks all over the place. Obviously had windmills to pump water, presumably out of the ponds, which we hope weren't terribly polluted. Tanner and Emmons ran the Hotel Rocks. I forgot to write down the dates. Maybe, oh yeah. Well, they ran it in the early 1900s. They charged $8 to $12 a week, depending on how fancy your room was. The first building, or no, this building burned down January 14th, 1915, just after they had remodeled it. They got the power.
Old Orchard's got nothing on us.
They replaced it with the next building. Well, here's some more pictures of it, actually. It's a beautiful building. So this is Lily Pond in the foreground. So you're standing on the causeway with the beach behind you, basically. So there's, oops, sorry, backing up a second. This is the casino over here. And this is a view from, I don't know what they were, not a drone. Somebody was up in something. I mean, it's no building over there. Maybe on the roof of the Cove Crest Inn, which was across the street. But you can see Tanner's Inn here. This is Lily Pond. This is Fortune's Rocks Road that takes a hard left and then winds down here toward the beach. The public beach is here, the Fortune's Rocks beach, and then Biddeford Pool is down in there. This building was actually, it predates, actually I do have stuff on that. This building predates the casino and was the original bowling alley in Fortune's Rocks. Warren Bryant built it. He was later on Tanner's partner in the Hotel Rocks. And I have a little quote from the Biddeford Daily Journal from an article in 1938 talking about what it was like there in 1880. In 1880, sociability was centered in the bowling alley. Mr. Bryant was responsible for having the building transferred by ferry from the Saco side of the river across the river to the Biddeford side at Ferry Lane. From Ferry Lane, it was hauled by oxen down Pool Road to the present location where the parts were reassembled. Additions were built. A small second story was added here. And a small section was partitioned off. Thus, this was the first store at the Rocks. The little store carried a small line of groceries, an assortment of candy, mostly stick candy, and round jawbreakers, plugged tobacco and pipes. Also, spruce beer bottled in stone bottles, which supposedly there are a lot of in the bottom of the pond. I had yes, that's cool. Bowling became very popular and dancing was a favorite pastime, music being furnished by an accordionist. During the evening, the people in the cottages met at the alley to talk over the gossip of the day, to bowl and to dance. So this building, for some reason, was replaced by the casino later on, presumably because the casino could hold more people, was bigger and so forth. And there it is again from this. We're now basically looking from Hotel Rocks at the back of the little bowling alley and store. This is the point of Ocean Spray Avenue here, and what's now Neptune Lane. Yeah, this is Ocean Spray. Neptune is farther on, but this is the far point of Fortune's Rocks.
Peter, what's that code called? Does it have a name?
It does. Can't remember. So this is the final version of Hotel Rocks, also called Tanner's Inn, also called the Fortune's Rocks House. Or the new Rocks Hotel. So you can see it's a completely different iteration now. It's a gambrel roof. It's pretty tall, probably nearly the same amount of rooms. Casino's still there. A few other pictures of it from across the cove. What had been the bowling alley has now been converted into a house, and there's still a house there. There's the bones of this building are still there, and what's now a fairly big two-story colonial. Here we are again. I believe this, I'm not going to say that. This may have been one of the Bryant's houses, but I'm not sure. Again, and this is a little disturbing, but I can't not include it because it is history. So this is a little flyer that the Tanner Inn published. And basically it's saying that we prefer Christians to come and stay in our hotel, and Jews can stay home or go somewhere else. That's the way it was. So the Fire 47 came roaring through here. And after the Fire 47, these are the pilings that the casino sat on. You can see this is the sign for the Tanner Inn, which is what it was called at the time. Fortune's Rocks was devastated. So we are going to go now to here, number 9 on your maps, on Old Kings Highway, which is the little dirt road that shoots off towards Granite Point, to the Cove Crest Inn, which is here. And get a different picture here. Yeah, this is the Cove Crest Inn. This was a Bryant house. Get my notes here. Warren Bryant converted his house into an inn. And Everett Gove ran it as the Wayside Inn, and then good old Charles Tanner bought it in 1910 and called it the Cove Crest Inn, and also called it Tanner's Inn. I don't know when it ended, when it had stopped doing business. It was sometime before 1947, because I have a picture that I'll show you in a second that shows the casino still in place and this building is no longer there. But it was a neat building, so none of these buildings, I think, none of these buildings exist on Old Kings Highway anymore. And this shows you, this is an aerial view from, must have been just before 1947. You can see that the Hotel Rocks is still there, but Tanner's Inn would have been right there and it's gone. This house is still here. It's the only one that's really identifiable now. It's Polly Weaver's old house. Really cute cottage right on the rocks. There it is again. And I include this, pardon me? Polly Weaver, and I believe it's still in her family. I think she passed away, but one of her sons has it.
Yeah.
And I include this because Polly Weaver wrote a letter that I was able to get a copy of, and she was talking about going back a second next door to Tanner's Inn. Whoops, back it up. Presumably, this house was a house that probably belonged to Bryant's daughter Hortense. She married Frank Bond, who built a house at the end of Old Kings Highway. Actually, no, it would be this house. Sorry, at the end of Old Kings Highway. Where Brian Jones and the Nichols family were. Frank kept pigs. He collected garbage for the feed. And during Prohibition, he was visited by the U.S. Marshals more than once for making whiskey. I'm including this picture and I'm going off topic for a second. But in the background of Polly's house, you see this place. And that's in Granite Point. That's the house that was on Hoyt Neck. Known to a lot of people as the Livingston Castle. It was built in 1913 by Crawford Livingston. He was among many other, he was a railroad mogul. He had a lot of Hollywood connections. He was allegedly a friend of Charlie Chaplin's. He and his family used the house only until the 1930s, so only for 25 or 30 years. And then it went to rack and ruin. It was basically abandoned. He apparently didn't run out of money. He just stopped being interested in going to Granite Point. Here it is again. Here it is. So this is Hoyt Neck. This is the causeway that goes out to Hoyt Neck. And if you know Hoyt Neck, you know there's probably 25 houses out there now. So this is the estate. This was the gatehouse, which still exists. It's the first house on what's that road called? Sea Spray?
Yeah.
Drive. So Richard Spitz bought the house for back taxes in about 1940. He did nothing with it for years. My brothers remember going over there to beer parties. I was too young, damn it. And it mysteriously burned down in 1965 after 25 years of abandonment. Spitz, interestingly, just sidebar, was supposedly one of the lawyers who defended Bruno Haupten in the Lindbergh baby trial, the trial of the century. But anyway, back to where we are. Oh, this is the brochure when they were trying to sell it. And there's a picture of it. Pretty regal place. So anyway, moving back to hotels, we are now gone down Fortune's Rocks Road almost to the public beach. Number 10 question mark on your map. And I put a question mark because I'm not positive about the location, but I think I know. So this is the Hotel Tanasaw. Charles Tanner and Charles Sawyer, a new guy, built this place and named it after themselves, cleverly Tanasaw, get it? So they built this in 1907.
Past tense since Tennessee.
There you go, exactly. You went to Tennessee and not Tanasaw. Sorry. So I believe this point of land is where Carol Troy's house is. I can't remember. No?
No, it's Neptune Lane.
No, you're wrong. I'll tell you what.
I'm right.
No, you're not. I'll argue with you. Actually, if you look at, shoot, I have the right slide. I'll prove it to you, Mikey.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, it might be where Neptune Lane was, but I believe it's where Carol Troy's house was. This building was built in 1907. Excuse me, not this building. This building was built in 1907. It burned on September 9th of 1908 after 2 seasons. Tanner got $20,000 in insurance money. He rebuilt it into this. Opened again March 3rd, 1909. Burned to the ground October 7th, 1909. A lot of fires in this talk. So Carol Troy's house was built in 1920. I think on that location, but we can argue. So this is the location. So if you know the area, this is the public beach right here in Fortune's Rocks. This is the old bathhouse, part of which is now across the street by the tennis court. And it's all public parking right along here, looking out to Biddeford Pool. So we're leaving Fortune's Rocks. That's it for Fortune's Rocks, folks.
Did the storm really move that old bathhouse across the road?
Yes, it did. I saw it.
Twice.
Yep. And
Yeah.
the guy that I'm currently arguing with put a sign on it saying, "Golly, Toto, it doesn't look like Kansas." So we're heading down towards Biddeford Pool. We're passing the bridge. This is the bridge that comes off of Bridge Road, connects Fortune's Rocks Road and Granite Point Road. Here it is again with some jaunty travelers going under it. A nice boat. And we're passing the old Whitecaps or Bouchers. We're jumping around in time a little bit, as you might guess. This is from the 50s, so I think. Best 10. There you go. Heading down Mile Stretch Road to Biddeford Pool. And we're now on Mile Stretch Road, coming in the corner of Yates Street. Mile Stretch Road is right over here. The community center's here. And we go up here to the intersection of Orchid Boulevard, what was then known as Main Street. We'll get back to this, but this is the Sea View Inn at the top of the hill. And these are some brochures from a couple of the hotels in Biddeford Pool. The inn, the Sea View Inn, the one I just showed you, was the one on the left. And then the Ocean View is what's now Marie Joseph Spiritual Center. Eve's grandparents owned this hotel, and they believe that sex sold. But we're going to back over to Stonecliff Road. So I'm going to start the Biddeford Pool part of this on Stonecliff. And we're going to start with number 1, and then we're going to go to number 13 and number 12. Excuse me for the numbering system. I can't remember how it got that way, but it did. So we're currently standing on top of an old windmill water tower at the end of Stonecliff. And we're looking, oops, back it up. We're looking at Old Stock right here, which is the oldest known inn in Biddeford Pool. And then the next one we're going to talk about is Christopher's Pasture. Old Stock was also known as the first mansion house. This is the second mansion house, which was built later. This is what was then the Ocean View Hotel, now Marie Joseph Spiritual Center. And this is the roof of the Sea View Inn back up in here. So if you saw the flyer advertising this talk, and it talked about, can you find 5 hotels in this picture? There they are.
That street now. I mean,
Stonecliff Road. Yeah. Yeah.
it's not like number 1.
No, it's not First Street. No. So Stonecliff Road, if you come on to Biddeford Pool and you take a right onto Orchid Boulevard, take an immediate left at the fire station. Union Church is right here, still here. This Christopher's Pasture is still there. This is the Abenaki Club tennis courts, but the Abenaki Club clubhouse hadn't been built yet. The Christopher's Pasture was actually used as the first clubhouse of the Abenaki Club.
Peter, can you speak up, please?
I could try. Got a bullhorn? So we are at 1, 13, and 12 right now. 1, 13, and 12, yes. Oh, what if I put myself more, then I'll have my back to half the room.
I've seen another meeting.
Huh?
Just,
Yeah.
it's a suggestion.
Well,
Do with it.
I'll try shouting. Here we are, the same view, slightly different because now you see the Abenaki Clubhouse building has been built, and you see a little bit more of the Sea View Inn here. So the oldest inn in Biddeford Pool, as I said, was Old Stock, opened in 1833 for guests. This is a view from Joseph Smith's book, Leanings from the Sea. which was published, I believe, in 1880 or 1882. You can see out here, this is the herring fleet that used to come into Biddeford Pool. And I don't know how long they were there, but they were a real presence. And the pictures just show masses of ships all over the harbor, all over the pool, in the wharfs. Christopher Hussey was a farmer. This is what is now the first hole of the golf course. But Christopher's pasture house was named appropriately because this was indeed Christopher's pasture. Old Stock was built in approximately 1737. We think it's the oldest house in Biddeford Pool. The oldest house in Biddeford, I believe, is the Haley House on the corner of Old Pool Road and Bridge Road, which was built in 1717. This was originally called the Mansion House, and then Christopher Hussey's place, or Uncle Chris's place, and eventually called Old Stock. These ladies, this is obviously after 1898 when the golf course opened. These ladies have their have their golf bag and they're ready to tee off with this one very lucky guy.
Caddy.
Sure. Hope he was tipped well. Christopher Hussey and Eunice originally opened the inn, excuse me. Then Christopher Hussey Jr. took it over. He married Mary Goldthwaite, who was known for her fine seafood dishes. Weekly boarding, including meals, in 1833 was $1.25. Mrs. Hussey was known to say to guests if they questioned the bill, if they think it's too much, they may take some off. The last time the old stock was listed in the Biddeford Business Directory was in 1839. So it lasted for about 106 years as a lodging establishment. The Kilbert family that lived there in the 50s and 60s said people stopped by looking for meals into the 50s. My father remembers being sent there to have meals with the chauffeurs. So here we are back again, and we're going to Christopher's pasture, which is this house right here, or number 12 on your maps. Christopher's pasture was built in approximately 1879 by Mary Hussey, who was Christopher's widow. Was named in memory of her husband. He had passed away by this time. She ran it as a boarding house, and then her children, Sarah and Jane, ran it as a boarding house as well. And then when the Abenaki Club was formed in 1898, it was leased out as the first clubhouse for the Abenaki Club and reading room as it was then. And then Sarah and Jane, because lodging and hostelry or innkeeping was in the Hussey blood. Here's another shot of Christopher's pasture here and Union Church here. And this is Old Stock back here, and then Christopher's pasture here, and the mansion house that we're getting to in a second here. A view from another elevated space. Old Stock, Christopher's pasture, and the new mansion house, which is here, which I'll get to in 1 second. And there it is. So here we have Christopher's pasture, and then Sarah and Jane built the new mansion house in 1886. The two sisters were never married. They ran this until 1907 or thereabouts. It had 12 bedrooms. Rates in 1905 were $10 to $12 a week. Inflation had hit by then. After the deaths of Sarah and Jane, I believe, here it is again. You can see it was very, very close to Old Stock. Neat old building. Here it is. This is a back view taken from the roof of the Sea View Inn. So now we're now looking towards Saco Bay. This is Wood Island out here. And what's now the golf course here. Here's the cemetery where St. Martin's Church is. This is the cemetery where St. Martin's Church is on the golf course now. So I believe, good guess, who knows? This might be Sarah and Jane standing on the front porch. Could be two other people, who knows? After the deaths of Sarah and Jane, it was rented by and then purchased by the Sea View Inn owners, and we're going to get to the Sea View Inn later. They used as overflow for when their inn was full. And they tore it down. They didn't need it anymore around 1938, and they tore it down, which apparently caused quite an outcry around town, and properly so. About 50 years after the first mansion house opened, the first mansion house being Old Stock. Is that right? Yeah. J.F. Locke in his book, The Shores of Saco Bay, which is a book about basically about hotels around Saco Bay, Old Orchard, Saco, Biddeford, Fortunes Rocks, and so forth.
Could you mention its name?
The Shores of Saco Bay. And I believe that the Dyer Library or the Saco Institute is going to do a talk on that this summer sometime, on more of the hotels around the bay. In any event, Locke wrote that the Huzzies were pioneers of the hotel business at this place. And here, lovers of nature can drink in the majesty of the ocean, and at the hotels, they can find intelligent and cultured companions. In Gleanings from the Sea, which is another book that I highly recommend, Joseph Smith writes similar accounts. He summered at the first mansion house, which was Old Stock here, when he was a kid in the 1840s, I believe, and early to mid 1800s, from the time he was a child of 8. He writes that prior to 1840, there were only 13 families living in Biddeford Pool, with a population of about 75 big families.
Yeah.
But by 1880, when he wrote Gleanings from the Sea, there were 50 houses and a population of 200. Wow. Which is about what it is now, I think. These 50 houses were all likely owned by locals, and the hotels and the inns and the boarding houses were a source of employment for many of the locals during the summers. Okay, so now we are going to go up the hill. Actually, first here I have, this is from the Boston and Maine Railroad brochure from 1910. And it gives you a little overview of hotels in Biddeford and in Biddeford Pool. The mansion house was at this time run by Mrs. Brown. This was after the Hussey sisters had passed away, so they were getting about $250 a night. The Ocean View Hotel was run by Henry Evans. We'll get to him in a while. And the Sea View Inn. It also shows in Biddeford, the Curtis Farm Hotel still being in existence. I have no idea what the Goose Rocks house was in Biddeford. But the Hotel Thatcher shows up, which later on was, or no, actually earlier had been run by Fred Yates, who also ran a hotel in Biddeford Pool that we'll get to.
That the rooms there, like that.
I don't know what the number.
Curtis 5100.
It has to be. It's not rooms. It might be. But I don't think the mansion house held 50 guests, so I don't really understand. I think maybe it was the railroad company guessing, just like I'm doing. So we're going up the hill now to, let's see, where am I? I'm lost. Number 5. So we were on Stone Cliff here. We're going back to Lester B. Orcutt Boulevard, which at the time was Main Street, number 5, which is the Ellsworth House. And after that, we're going to go down here. Oopsie. To remind you, to number 14, which is the Evans Hotel. So anyway, the Ellsworth House was built by, was run by Captain George Evans, who was my wife Eve's great-grandfather. Built in about 1862. It was run as a guest house. Joseph Smith in Gleanings from the Sea writes that Captain Evans was a gracious host, and his success came from kindness and courteous mannerisms, much like his great-granddaughter. It was later known as the Evans Cottage. It was a beautiful old house. It sits on the corner of the property where we live now, and it took up most of that lot. This is a picture of Joseph Smith himself. When Joseph Smith stayed here, he seemed to photobomb every picture of this house. The big old elm tree came down, and these are presumably the Evans boys checking out the damage. And here's Joseph Smith checking out the Evans boys, making sure they're working. Here's Joseph on the front on the porch of the Evans house, of the Ellsworth House, Evans Cottage. You can see Union Church in the background if that helps you get oriented. We're looking across the lower part of the end lawn, the lawn of the Sea View Inn. So this building burned down. Hello, oops, oh, there it is again. All right. Okay, there we go. There it is again at the top of the hill. So this carriage is going up. This carriage is going up Orchid Boulevard, otherwise known as Main Street. The fire station is over here on the right-hand side. So he's just going up toward the intersection of Mile Stretch Road and Orchid Boulevard. Here it is again, a little blown up, same thing. That building burned down in 1948. It was a terrible fire. It was in January. Excuse me, 47. 47? Anyway, it was extremely cold. Norman Goldthwait, Goldie Goldthwait, was one of the firefighters who fought the fire, and he told us personally that their boots froze in the ice. They had to leave their boots behind. Water mains froze, hoses were frozen, everything was a disaster. There was no way they were safe in the house. It was not occupied at the time of the winter, and they had gone to Biddeford for that winter. It's a shame. It was a terrible house. They knocked it down, what was left, dug a hole in the lawn, bulldozed it all in there. Every time we dig a hole, we find salt shakers or melted glass or something. Anyway, Captain Evans' son, his son Horace Evans, built what's now Marie Joseph Spiritual Center. This is number, where this is number 14 on your map. It was built in about we know it was built before 1898. Not sure exactly how much before 1898, but we know that one of Horace's children was born there in 1898. So Horace ran it for a couple of years, and then for various reasons, he ended up selling it to his brother Henry. Henry was his grandfather. Henry and Florence ran it from July 1st, at least July 1st, 1911. It was a very popular hotel. This was maybe what started the time when mothers and the maids and the kids would come up with their steamer trunks in July and spend the summer. And then, dad would stay back in Cincinnati or St. Louis or wherever and continue working and show up for the last 2 weeks in August. But it was a really, really popular hotel. This is a sketch of Henry Evans done by James Montgomery Flagg. Jaunty looking fella. Never knew him, unfortunately. I got lots and lots of pictures of this hotel, and I won't bore you with all of them, but it was a beautiful old place. So it's right on the beach. What?
You're mumbling.
I mumbled. They do best. I will read to you then. Their opening brochure on July 11th, 1911 said the Ocean View Hotel at Biddeford Pool has accommodations for 100 guests. It is most favorably located upon an elevation within 200 yards of the ocean, affording a grand view of the surrounding country, oceans, and bay, with the White Mountains forming a beautiful background. The chambers are all large outside rooms arranged both single and en suite, are perfectly ventilated, are beautifully tinted in soft light colors. The beds are double and are supplied with the finest curled hair mattresses and woven springs. The sanitation is perfect, modern toilets and baths being installed. Fire escapes are located at the end of each of the corridors, and chemical fire extinguishers are on every floor. The grounds, which include one of the finest bathing beaches on the Atlantic coast, comprise nearly 8 acres and contain the most wonderful freshwater pond within 200 yards of the ocean, a spring of absolutely pure mineral water which supplies the hotel. The dining room is large and airy. Its beautifully tinted walls, its polished floors, and well-laid tables make it a room which all delight to dine. Being supplied direct from the farms with garden and dairy products and from the ocean with seafoods, the proprietor has established the reputation for serving the best. And this was an early farm-to-table restaurant. The fishing and gunning at the pool is the delight of sportsmen. Off the rocks with rod and reel, small fish are caught in abundance, while offshore you may enjoy the most exciting deep sea fishing. And Biddeford Pool is actually known as a great spot to go sword fishing. You could go out a mile or so offshore, and if you had a good day, you might hook a big one or two. You're eligible for membership in the golf links at the nearby Abenaki Club. That combined with surf bathing, yachting, rowing, canoeing, and the opportunity for beautiful walks and rides in the country and along the shore furnish outdoor amusements and recreations for everybody. This is a view from the beach and the bathhouses that belong to the hotel. Of the many resorts on the beautiful coast of Maine, none is more favored by nature than Biddeford Pool. Located on a peninsula, its grandeur of scenery, its cool, pure air, excellent beach, and peaceful waters make it a resort where mind and body find invigoration and inspiration. There you go. One of the brochures. Henry died in 1937. And Florence, his wife, who was born in Galashiels, Scotland, ran it until 1948 on her own. In 1948, it was just exhausting for her. She sold it to the Sisters of the Presentation, Mary, for a girls' school and a novice training center, training school for novices. And it has since then become the Marie Joseph Spiritual Center. And we find them to be great neighbors. Here's a layout of the rooms. My grandparents used to stay here, and we're good friends with her grandparents.
And they had indoor plumbing at that time.
They had running water on all the floors except the third floor.
That's why it's there.
Pardon me?
Was there truly a mineral water source?
There is a spring in the Great Pond. Beyond that, I can't tell you how minerally the water was or how pure it was. But as far as I know, nobody died of it. We have a collection of menus from the hotel, and they're wonderful. You know, some things you won't, I can't remember this. A lot of them have things like boiled tongue, but a lot of them have things that we would love to eat today. So it's pretty good chow.
They love potato spices.
Yeah. They also had entertainment. What? They showed movies. They respectfully informed the nobility and gentry and other guests of the hostelry that on this very night there would be the art of magic. So they had lots of entertainment, including Bruce the Magician and his deluxe magical review. So this is a clipping from 1948 when the hotel was sold. As I said, Mrs. Evans sold it to the Sisters of the Presentation of Mary. It's been with them ever since, and they're great neighbors.
How much they pay for it?
50 grand. 8 acres on the beach. If I'd been their real estate broker, I would have been allowed. In 1975, the sisters were considering selling the building, and the state was considering buying it to turn it into a park. For reasons that I can't recall and are too complicated, they didn't, and we're glad they didn't because it really is great to have the sisters there. So where the heck am I going now? We're staying with the family, and we're going up to number 20, which is the Greeley House, or Bide a While, which is my house, our house, right here. So here's the Evans cottage that Captain Evans ran, that burned down in 1947 or 48. They also owned this property right here. When Mrs. Evans sold the hotel, so this house had been rented to a particular family, the Greeleys, for years. But when Mrs. Evans sold the hotel, they moved into this house and started running it as a B&B. At some point or another, it was called Bide a While, but we knew it as the Greeley House. It also, so it's the Greeley House, and it was the Red Geranium Room where the innkeeper had a breakfast room, a tea room, breakfast and lunch, and private dinners were served. in what's now my dining room. Our dining room. And here's a newspaper clipping of the innkeeper. There was a little bit of pushback from the city about whether or not they were allowed to sell meals, but it all worked out. But in any event, after we were married and started having children, Eve, the innkeeper, stopped renting rooms. After 120 years of the Evans family running various inns in Biddeford Pool. This is across the street from across our driveway from our house, from the Greeley house. This is number 20 on your maps. This is called the Holman House. This was one of the earliest buildings on that property, which a lot of people know of as the Inn Lawn. And the Holman House was built in about 1845. It grew over the years, eventually to hold as many as 125 guests. Daniel Holman was the proprietor. He was apparently a force to be reckoned with. He was a city councilor. He owned the First National Bank, I believe. This is Maxwell, at some point or another, before your time. He was one of the founders of Union Church in Biddeford Pool. He was a very religious man. Not only was there no liquor sold on the premises or consumed on the premises, but you couldn't check in or check out on Sabbath. He was also a fisherman and a farmer. Guests in the Holman House included Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes. Guests in the Holman House included Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes. Daniel Holman died in 1878, and his grandson, William Starkweather, took over. He demolished that building, and he built the biggest hotel on the coast of Biddeford ever, to my knowledge, which was the Highland House. So this sat on what is now known as the Inn Lawn. So it's on the corner of Orchid Boulevard and Mile Stretch Road. If you come up Mile Stretch Road and hit that intersection, this would have been looming large right in front of you. I mean, large. 300 guests. So he built this in 1880, I believe. He ran it for 3 seasons. So the only photograph, so this is a drawing from that from the book that I mentioned previously that I'm not going to remember the name of right now. The only photograph that we have of it is where it shows up. So this is what's now the Colgate condominium house. If you come up Mile Stretch Road to the intersection of Lester Orchid Boulevard, it's the building on your left. It used to be known as the Red House. The Colgate family rented it for years, but if you look behind it, you see that hotel, which was enormous. Blow it up a little bit, you can sort of see it there. I mean, it was a big building. Anyway, ran it for 3 seasons, burned to the ground, 1882. I mean, they're all wood buildings, and they all had cook stoves that were probably either coal or wood. People smoked, everybody smoked. They didn't stand a chance.
Was there electricity?
1882, I don't think so.
So they were all maneuvered by candlelight?
Wheel oil. I don't know. Yeah. You forget to, you knock the lamp over if you had too many drinks, and that's the end of that. That brings us to the inn, which is on the same piece of property, which is known as the Ocean House, the Seaview Inn, the inn. In various iterations, it's existed on that same property from 1847 to 1965. So this doesn't show the inn. This just shows the sign on what's now Orchid Boulevard. As you in the late 1800s, if you came up Mile Stretch Road to the intersection, you'd see this building, which was one of the earlier iterations. Obviously to me, or I think anyway, this was a couple of different buildings that were joined together over time, because you can see there's a mansard roof portion of it here. There's a gable version of it here, and it's connected in the middle with another, I think, gable section. You'll see more of that Another very blurry picture of it with a water tower in the middle of it. There it is. Not a terribly attractive building or very attractive looking piece of setting, but it was a popular place. This is the Sea View Inn, yeah. So John Huzzy, who was the son of Christopher Huzzy Sr., who was born at the original mansion house, otherwise known as Woodstock, Old Stock. And then his son Charles owned it. They sold it to Frederick Brown in 1897, and the Browns owned and built a lot of property in Biddeford Pool. They ran the Sea View Inn for years. Wright Emmons built an addition, and I'll show you that in a minute, and it was renamed the Sea View Inn. Fred Yates ran it for quite some time. Fred Yates, will see his hotel later, the Yates House on what's known as Yates Street, what is called Yates Street. Fred Yates also ran the Thatcher Hotel for a time. Here it is from, this is down the fire station. Oops, don't do that. Fire station's over here. So this is looking up the hill toward that intersection. Here's the side of the building. Pretty much the same view. Here's the old fire station that was replaced with the new volunteer fire department in 1960. You can see the building here with the water tower in the middle. This is the Lilacs Cottage, which is still there. Our house, which is still there. This is it from Orchid Boulevard down towards St. Brendan's Church, the corner of First Street and Orchid Boulevard. So you can see the Sea View Inn back up here, Union Church, and Old Stock here. This is the back view. Well, what I think of as being the back view. It was the back view when we were younger. This was actually the front move. This was the front originally. And this faces east essentially. This is the back, this is the dining room, and you can see the gable building here and the mansard building here, and the twain did meet eventually. This is a neat old building. I was mumbling. Same view, a little bit better picture. So this is from the backside. We're looking toward the south now. This is it from this picture was actually taken from Marie Joseph. It's a long, must have had a good telephone lens, but this is the inn here. This is backing up, same picture more or less. You can see the inn in the background. Here's Union Church. Here's the mansion house. Here's the monument on Monument Island, if you know your way around the bay. And same view again, more or less, except now you see the new facade has been built. So it's a much prettier building all of a sudden. They built this, the new facade has now been built. They built this big gambrel section in the front. So the mansard part is still in the back and the other gable part is still on the other side of the back, but they built this 3.5-story addition on the front and made it a much more attractive building. That part of it opened in 1940. This is a testimonial written by Kenneth Roberts, who wrote Arundel and Boone Island and lots of other books about the area. If you've never read any of those, you should. They're wonderful books. I just reread Arundel. It's really fun. They start in Kennebunkport on the banks of the river and walk to Quebec. But anyway, Kenneth Roberts writes a lovely testimonial about how Richard Vines settled somewhere near this area, and he would have been proud to see it being used so well. I remember the guys cooking over the grill in the dining room. They used to grill lobsters, which were really good. So this is an aerial view. Here's the inn after the sea, now called the inn. They dropped the sea view. It became just the inn. And this is it after they put the new facade on. Here's Union Church and the golf course just for orientation. And here's the Evans Cottage here. The 300 guest hotel, the Highland House, was, I think, here down on this part. Go on. There's again. Again, it's a very pretty building. This is a picture of somebody moving a water tank either up or down Orchid Boulevard. God bless them. Brochure of the inn. So, so for orientation, this flagpole is still here.
Yeah.
So where did the train bring people? It said it's 9 miles.
The train, where did the train drop people off at the depot, either in Biddeford or Saco? And people,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so early on, the people would take the ferry. There was a ferry that came from what they called Steamboat Wharf, which I assume was somewhere near Memory's Boatyard. They'd ferry down and there was a ferry landing right at the gut in Biddeford Pool. Some people took the train to Saco, and from Saco, they would get some kind of transportation down to Camp Ellis. And there were two small ferries that went from Camp Ellis, the Nimrod and the Goldenrod. From Steamboat Wharf from Biddeford, it was either the Atlantic. No, we'll get to that. I can't remember. The steamboats came down the river from Biddeford or Saco, depending on where you got off the train. Also, Eve's grandfather would send a buckboard up to meet the train if necessary and bring you down with your luggage. If you took the ferry, the buckboard would meet you down at the gut and transport you and your stuff up the hill. This is a layout of the inn. And there's more of this stuff in the back if you're interested. But you can see that the inn, oops, don't do that. Had a library, a card room, a men's bar, a lounge, another bar here. This is the dining room in the back. You walked in and there was a big mahogany, I think, counter with a bell. It was the whole deal. It was really pretty exciting. So I've totally lost where I was here. Thank you. They had a Thursday evening buffet that was quite famous, roasting lobsters, carving roast beef. Most of the rooms had baths down the hall, but there were a few rooms that had ensuite baths. They too had use of the Abenaki Golf and Tennis Club. By the 1960s, it was owned by a consortium of summer people, and more people had started building their own cottages, so it wasn't really being utilized much anymore, even though Biddeford Pool had gone from having 5 big establishments with rooms. None of them, this is the last big one, but it couldn't make any money anymore. And people were pumping money into it every year and kind of got tired of it. This is a rate schedule. I can't remember from what year, but as you can see, prices have gone up dramatically. We're up to $36 a week for some of the nice rooms. Daily? That's enough.
Daily.
Really? Oh, that's right. Wow, yeah. Yeah. Price himself on this, probably 50s, yeah. It's the type of, yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. Liz, here's some swells having a dinner party at the end.
So the pendulum really swung from all this commerce to zero.
Well, to people having their own houses.
Right. And zero.
I'm guessing about the same number of people came, and the people who worked in the hotels then started taking care of the cottages and worked out. This is it. This is not it. We have a picture like this just before it was torn down. But anyway, again from the Ocean View Hotel or from the convent. This picture was taken in the 1960s or early 70s. No, excuse me, early 70s. This would have been early 60s. This is the last really good long view, but you can see it was a big building. That's all it back there.
Many models.
And then in 1965, they decided that it just wasn't worth maintaining it. They had just reshingled the front of the building. The state fire marshal came in and said, you got to put in a sprinkler system. It was going to cost 20 grand. They said, no, thank you. Make it go away. So Lucian Bork tore it down, trucked all the lumber to the pit and burned it.
Oh.
Now we're going to jump forward a little bit in time. Well, actually not And here, this is the Seahawk Motel, which is now the Seahawk Apartments. This is way down on Orchid Boulevard, number 18 on your map, almost to when you get the ocean on Orchid Boulevard. Don't know much about it. It was opened in 1956 as a motel, essentially. And you can see the motel units back here, and there were several units in here. My first apartment when I was a kid was right there. Was run by someone named Leona Bovai and then Alder Gay. And then Garnet Colpitts purchased it in 1967 and converted it into just an apartment house. So it was no longer a motel after that. But it counts. That is number 18. And now we're going to skip over to number 16 here, which is on Yates Street. Just down the street from the community center. And after that, I'm going to go to number 15, which is on Orchid Boulevard. So number 16 is Crowley's Inn or Ye Old Homestead. Opened in about 1937. I think the building predates that, but they opened it as an inn. They opened it as an inn in about 1937. Harriet Crowley was the innkeeper and the chef. Hattie Crowley was Vicki Goodwin's grandmother. You might remember her from this. She didn't run Hattie's Deli, but she was the Hattie that Hattie's Deli was named after. I can't figure out where the hair stops and the hat starts. It's a great question. So Hattie ran it for a while, and then Fred Tarbox apparently ran it for a while. An ad in the Biddeford City Directory called it clean, quiet, comfortable with home-like rooms and cooking. And then over to Orchid Boulevard. So these are now the Winter Harbor condominiums. At the time, it was the Sokoke Inn. It was also known as the Winter Harbor Inn. It was run from about 1930 to about 1942 as an inn. Don't know much about it. It's listed in the city directory for those dates. I know that the Oddie family, who later owned the Lodge B&B guest house, ran it for a while because John Oddie gave me a sign that they had that said Sea View Inn dinners and cocktails or something like that. So it was an inn for a while. There it is again. Building is still there and very recognizable. The barn is different, but the rest of it is pretty much identical. And Billy just replaced that porch.
Yeah.
Or is replacing it. Working on it. Work in progress. This takes us down the street to number 4. Here. So this is where Orchid Boulevard and Yates Street intersect and make that hairpin turn at the end of the road, just before you hit the gut. And this is the Yates house. Also known as the Cutts house or the Bryant house. First piece of it was built in 1844. It's just across the street from the gut, across the street from where the ferry terminal was. So if you came down the river on the ferry, you wouldn't need a buckboard. You just walk across the street and probably schlep your own stuff. Familiar names that ran this place over the years. Any historians here will recognize Colonel Thomas Cutts. He and his father were big landowners, shipbuilders, shipping magnates all over the world. Really, we have a letter that he wrote to his father from France, talking about how he sold whatever he was shipping. I forgot what it was for X number of dollars. He put it in the bank in Paris, and Dad, you can get the money anytime I'm coming home. Also Moses Hill and Isaac Bickford in 1949. Fred Yates, after whom the street was named, also ran the Thatcher Hotel. 4 to 5 stories, 150 guests. Lots of pictures of it. Lots of stereoscopic pictures. Look at all the people. It's shrouded. And apparently there were no real rules about what you could have done. Hang your laundry on the rail. Free-spirited rooming house, apparently. But, boy, popular, I guess. I'm gonna go back for a second. So I'm gonna read you something, from an ad in 1879. The Yates House has during the present season been renovated, refitted, refurnished, and put in first-class order, thereby making it second to none on the coast of Maine. It will reopen for the reception of guests on July 1st. Appreciating the fact that the public now demands low rates for seaside board, the proprietor has placed his prices at the low figure of $8 to $10 a week. An orchestra has been engaged for the season, and numerous other attractions have been added, which will combine to make the summer of 1879 more enjoyable than any preceding season. For boating, bathing, and fishing, it's unsurpassed. Parties requiring a quiet yet delightful resort will find the pool just such a place that will suit them, being free from the noise and confusion of steam cars, fast driving, and boisterous crowds of people that have late infest the other public summer resorts. The prevailing winds are southwesterly during the summer months and are soft and mild, are very soft and mild, being particularly desirable for invalids. You can't say that anymore either. You know, choose, right? From the Yates House, an unobstructed view is had of the grand old ocean, as well as the vast expanse of green landscape and waving forest. Not sure where that was. Old Orchard Beach, with its many hotels, may be plainly seen. Biddeford may be reached by either the Boston and Maine or Eastern railroads. The steamer Augusta will make 2 trips daily from the cities and the pool to the pool, leaving the Factory Island Wharf at 9:30 a.m. and 2 p.m., landing within a few rods of the Yates House. There it is from up the hill, near the corner of Orchard Boulevard and Mile Stretch Road, looking down the hill. So the gut is down here. You can see the herring fleet in the pool over here, all the sails and so forth. Here's the Yates House. This is Cut's store, which will show up in a couple of other pictures in a minute. Cut's store was run by the Thomas Cutts family, obviously, who also had a lot of shipbuilding in Biddeford Pool. This store was in existence in 1814 when the British raided Biddeford Pool, burned Thomas Cutts' ships, and stole all the rum from the store, which was very tragic. Yes. I'll be done in about 5. Get the hook. So here's the steamer Augusta, landed. Steamer, it's a big ship. Big ship. I don't know if you know the gut very well, but turning this baby around in there would be a trick. Here's the Yates House. Here's the Cutts store. This is basically what's now Audie's Dock, if you know that, right on the gut near the yacht club. So the Yates House, guess what? Burned down June 15th, 1884, along with several other homes in the neighborhood, the Hussey store across the street, and a bowling alley. Fred Yates was in the building along with a cook and a hotel steward and several guests who managed to escape the house through a window over a piazza roof, and they dropped to the ground successfully. So here it is from across the gut. This picture is taken from Fort Hill. Here's the Yates House. Here's Cutts store. Here's the steamboat landing here. And here's another one. The steamer's coming in.
Yeah.
All the people on it.
A lot of people on it. Yeah. This is one of the smaller. This is the Goldenrod, the ship, the steamer that came down the river from Saco, a much smaller boat. But this is the ferry landing, little enclosure for it, on what basically is now Audie's Dock, or T Wharf as they called it then. You can see ships in the harbor and some kind of a big barge. And here's the monument, just to give you an orientation of where you are. And then here it is from across the gut after Cutts store is gone, the Yates House is gone. The landscape has changed dramatically. This little building was the fish market that became Ocean View Properties. What was I going to say? So yes, so the last inn on Biddeford Pool was on this property here, where the Cutts house was. which is right about here. Oops, I forgot something. So after the Yates house was burned, but sometime in the late 1800s, something happened in downtown Biddeford Pool. This guy is on the porch of F.O. Goldthwaite's, making a speech. Some people have postulated it's William Jennings Bryan. He ran for vice president with Arthur Sewell, who was the presidential candidate of the Democratic Party in 1896. Might have been them, or might not.
I don't know, there's cars in that picture. I don't think it's late 1800s.
Oh, there's a good point. Okay, so that puts light to that. So what are they doing?
Oops, they're saluting.
Maybe it's just a 4th of July parade, but boy, it's one fancy parade.
Yeah. Cars.
Yeah, you know, you're right. Absolutely. Good point. Good point. So, okay, we'll skip that one. Who knows? All these little girls dressed up in their pinafores anyway. Interesting. So these guys are leaning on the fence of the old Yates house. So I thought it was okay to put that in there. Thank you. Good point. So this is the Oddie property, the Lodge B&B, which is the last establishment in Biddeford Pool. Opened in about 1966. Dr. Oddie and Mrs. Oddie built this house, and after Dr. Oddie died, Mrs. Oddie was active at St. Francis College and realized that there were a lot of kids who needed places to stay. So she opened up her house to college students and then started taking in summer guests as well. Her son John inherited it after she passed away, and he ran it as a B&B until he passed away in 2015, I believe. And that's the back of the Oddie B&B, the lodge. That's their wharf. So this is the old steamboat landing, now Oddie's dock. This was Crawley's Lobster Pound, then Fletcher's Neck Lobster Pound, then Innis's Lobster, then something else. That's pretty much here's Cut's store, which is where Oddie's is. That's it. Any questions? Yeah.
Did you know that Carlos and Rose Goldwaite used to run a bus,
Yeah.
public bus?
When I flunked Latin in 9th grade, I had to take the bus to town to get to it. Yes.
Where'd you get all these pictures?
We have a collection of people, when you start doing stuff like this, people say, I've got a picture of that, I'll send it to you. Yeah, zillions. Yeah, but there's a website called bepoolphotos.com, and a lot of these are on that list.
Need to get some on here for McArthur.
I know. Gotta be looking at it. Yes. Bepoolphotos.com.